Okay, today is the 3rd of September, and on the 51st chapter, the Iddhipada Samyutta, we come to Sutta 51.31. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus: "What do you think, monks? By having developed and cultivated what things has the monk Moggallana become so powerful and mighty?" Let's stop here for a moment. Venerable Moggallana is the disciple of the Buddha with the greatest psychic power. And the monk said, "Venerable Sir, our teachings are rooted in the Blessed One, etc." And the Buddha said, "It is because he has developed and cultivated the 4 bases for psychic power that the monk Moggallana has become so powerful and mighty." What for? Dear monks, the monk Moggallana has developed the basis for psychic power of concentration due to desire, accompanied by effort and volition, thinking, "Thus my desire will be neither too slack nor too tense, and it will be neither constricted internally nor distracted externally." And he has dwelt perceiving after and before, as before so after, as after so before, as below so above, as above so below, as by day so at night, as at night so by day. Thus with a mind that is open and unenveloped, he has developed the mind imbued with luminosity. He has developed this basis for psychic power of concentration due to energy, similarly of concentration due to mind, of concentration due to investigation, accompanied by effort and volition. Thus with a mind that is open and unenveloped, he has developed the mind imbued with luminosity. It is monks, because he has developed and cultivated these 4 bases for psychic power, that the monk Moggallana has become so powerful and mighty. It is monks, because the monk Moggallana has developed and cultivated these 4 bases for psychic power, that he wields the various kinds of psychic power, such as having been one he becomes many, having been many he becomes one, etc. He exercises mastery with the body as far as the Brahma world. It is monks, because the monk Moggallana has developed and cultivated these 4 bases for psychic power, that by the destruction of the asavas, in this very life he enters and dwells in the taintless liberation by mind, liberation by wisdom, realizing it for himself with direct knowledge. That's the end of the sutta. So, in an earlier sutta, when we read about the Venerable Anuruddha, his psychic powers were due to the practice of satipatthana, because the practice of satipatthana is synonymous with the development of jhana. But here, the Venerable Moggallana, his emphasis is on the 4 bases for psychic power. So that's the last sutta I'm reading of the Iddhipada Samyutta. Now we come to the 52nd chapter of the Samyutta Nikaya, Anuruddha Samyutta. Anuruddha is the disciple of the Buddha, the Arahant, with the greatest heavenly eye. He is supposed to be able to see 1,000 world systems so clearly, like in the palm of his hand. In other words, his mind has opened up so to be boundless. Has attained this arupa jhanas. The first sutta is 52.1. On one occasion, the Venerable Anuruddha was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then while the Venerable Anuruddha was alone in seclusion, a reflection arose in his mind thus: "Those who have neglected these 4 intense states of recollection have neglected the noble path leading to the complete destruction of suffering. Those who have undertaken these 4 intense states of recollection have undertaken the noble path leading to the complete destruction of suffering." Stop here for a moment. I just mentioned a while ago that the Venerable Anuruddha, his emphasis is on the Satipatthana, and here we find him again talking about this Satipatthana. So you have, because the Buddha has taught the various ways of practicing, and also the different objects of contemplation. So like in these 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas, different Arahants, they succeed with different methods, like the Venerable Anuruddha, he is more on Satipatthana. Venerable Mahamoggallana is more on the 4 Iddhipada. And also, as far as the objects of contemplation, there are some Arahants, they become Arahants due to contemplation of the 5 aggregates. Some attain Arahanthood from contemplating the 6 sense spaces, and some attain Arahanthood from contemplating the 12 links of dependent origination. But even though there is a slight variation in the practice, all this practice is basically centered on the Noble Eightfold Path. Cannot run away from the Noble Eightfold Path. Then the Venerable Mahamoggallana, having known with his own mind the reflection in the Venerable Anuruddha's mind, just as quickly as a strong man might extend his drawn-in arm, or draw in his extended arm, appeared in the presence of the Venerable Anuruddha and said to him, "To what extent, friend Anuruddha, have these 4 intense states of recollection been undertaken by a monk?" And Venerable Anuruddha replied, "Here, friend, a monk dwells contemplating the nature of origination in the body internally. He dwells contemplating the nature of vanishing in the body internally. He dwells contemplating the nature of origination and vanishing in the body internally, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating the nature of origination in the body externally. He dwells contemplating the nature of vanishing in the body externally. He dwells contemplating the nature of origination and vanishing in the body externally, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating the nature of origination in the body internally and externally. He dwells contemplating the nature of vanishing in the body internally and externally. He dwells contemplating the nature of origination and vanishing in the body internally and externally, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. If he wishes, may I dwell perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive. He dwells perceiving the repulsive therein. If he wishes, may I dwell perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive. He dwells perceiving the unrepulsive therein. If he wishes, may I dwell perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive and in the repulsive. He dwells perceiving the repulsive therein. If he wishes, may I dwell perceiving the unrepulsive in the repulsive and in the unrepulsive. He dwells perceiving the unrepulsive therein. If he wishes, avoiding both the unrepulsive and the repulsive, may I dwell equanimously, mindful and collected. Then he dwells therein equanimously, collected and clearly aware. He dwells contemplating the nature of origination, the nature of vanishing, the nature of origination and vanishing in feelings internally, in feelings externally, in feelings internally and externally, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. If he wishes, may I dwell perceiving the repulsive in the unrepulsive. He dwells perceiving the repulsive therein. If he wishes, avoiding both the unrepulsive and the repulsive, may I dwell equanimously, recollected and clearly aware. Then he dwells therein equanimously, recollected and clearly aware. He dwells contemplating the nature of origination, the nature of vanishing, nature of origination and vanishing in the mind, internally, externally. Similarly, if he wishes, may I dwell perceiving the repulsive. He perceives the repulsive. And then he dwells contemplating the nature of origination, nature of vanishing, etc. in Dhamma, internally, externally. And similarly, if he wishes, If he wants to perceive the repulsive, he perceives the repulsive. It is in this way, friend, that these 4 intense states of recollection have been undertaken by a monk. So here the Venerable Anuruddha says that if a monk practices the 4 satipatthanas and develops them fully, then he is able to, if he wishes to perceive the repulsive, he perceives the repulsive either in the repulsive or in the unrepulsive. If he wants to perceive unrepulsive, then he perceives unrepulsive. It's not easy to do because this perception of repulsiveness and unrepulsiveness is due to habit. We have developed it over many lifetimes, so it's very difficult to change unless the mind is very strong. So what do you mean by perceiving the repulsive and the unrepulsive? For example, if you see a body of the opposite sex, it is unrepulsive, and in fact it's very attractive, and lust arises. But if a monk develops his mind to be so strong, if he wants to see in the body repulsiveness, he can see like inside the body consisting of head, hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin, flesh, sinew, bones, etc., with all the excrement and blood and pus and all that, then he can feel it's repulsive. And on the other hand, the other extreme, suppose he sees a rotten corpse. To an ordinary person, when you see a rotten corpse, you feel it's very repulsive. You dare not look. You cannot stand the stench or so. But if he wants to perceive it as unrepulsive, because his mind is so strong, he can perceive it as unrepulsive. Many years ago, when I first went to Thailand, I met an old monk, and that old monk is a Teochew monk. I knew him from Ipoh before I went to Thailand. So I went to stay with him. He was telling me about one young Thai monk many years ago. He was practicing very hard. Then he went to a place where they had thrown the corpse. He held the corpse for many hours, holding the corpse and contemplating the corpse. And then to the extent that he even beat the corpse just to not to feel repulsiveness, and just beat the corpse. So that's hard to do unless your mind is very strong enough. Your mind is not strong, then our feelings control us. But if the mind is strong enough, then the mind controls the feeling. Next sutta is 52.4. On one occasion, the Venerable Anuruddha, the Venerable Sariputta, and the Venerable Mahamoggallana were dwelling at Saketa in the thorn bush grove. Then in the evening, the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Mahamoggallana emerged from seclusion, approached the Venerable Anuruddha, and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, they sat down to one side, and the Venerable Sariputta said to the Venerable Anuruddha, "Friend Anuruddha, what are the things that a monk who is a trainee should enter and dwell in?" And he said, "Friend Sariputta, a monk who is a trainee should enter and dwell in the 4 intense states of recollection, satipatthana." What for? Dear friend, a monk dwells contemplating the body in the body. This body in the body, Brother Mok has just informed me that the Venerable Tanisaro's contemplation, his interpretation is dwells contemplating the body in and of itself, right? Dwells contemplating the body in and of itself. That means in the body, not outside of the body, just like what I said, that not among thoughts and all that, but centered on the body, and focused on the body. It was contemplating feelings in and of itself, mind in and of itself, Dhamma in and of itself, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. A monk who is a trainee should enter and dwell in these 4 intense states of recollection. Then the next sutta is similar, as Saketa. That's 52.5. Sitting to one side, the Venerable Sariputta said to the Venerable Anuruddha, "Friend Anuruddha, what are the things that a monk who is beyond training should enter and dwell in?" Among beyond training is the Pali word is aseka. Seka is one who is training. One who is in training means Arya. The 7 types of Arya: first path, first fruit; second path, second fruit; third path, third fruit; and the fourth path, attainer. They have become Arya, but they have not finished their work. The one beyond training, the Aseka, is the fourth fruit attainer. The Arahant has finished his work. And then Venerable Anuruddha replied, "Friend Sariputta, a monk who is beyond training should enter and dwell in the 4 intense states of recollection, satipatthana. What for? Dear friend, a monk dwells contemplating the body in the body, or the body in and of itself, feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. A monk who is beyond training should enter and dwell in these 4 intense states of recollection." So you see from these 2 suttas that the Venerable Anuruddha, he is a specialist in the 4 satipatthanas. That's why he recommends the 4 satipatthanas to Arya who's cultivating to attain arahanthood. And even for the Arahant who has finished his work, this Venerable Anuruddha still recommends that he practice the 4 satipatthanas. The next sutta is 52.6. Asaketa. Sitting to one side, the Venerable Sariputta said to the Venerable Anuruddha, "By having developed and cultivated what things has the Venerable Anuruddha attained great supernormal power or great spiritual power?" This translation here is greatness of direct knowledge. This doesn't give a good idea because the Pali word is Maha Abhinya. Abhinya are the higher knowledges, and actually a more appropriate term would be Maha great, and Abhinya is a spiritual powers. Just like when we talk about the Iddhipada, 4 bases of spiritual power or 4 bases of psychic power, because these Abhinya are the 6 knowledges, and out of these 6, 5 of them are psychic powers. The psychokinesis, where one body can become many bodies and can go through the wall, can fly like a bird, etc. Then you have the heavenly eye or divine eye, and then the divine ear, and then the recollecting past lives, and then reading other people's minds, other beings' minds. So these are the 5 types of psychic power. And the last one, the 6th one, is the destruction of the asavas, that means becoming enlightened. So abhinya, good translation would be spiritual powers. So Maha Abhinya is great spiritual powers or great supernormal powers. And he answered. So Venerable Sariputta is asking him, what did you practice to get such great psychic powers, such great supernormal powers? And he said, "Friend, it is because I have developed and cultivated the 4 intense states of recollection that I have attained to great supernormal powers." What for? Dear friend, I dwell contemplating the body in the body, feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. It is, friend, because I have developed and cultivated these 4 intense states of recollection that I have attained to great supernormal power or great psychic powers. Further, friend, it is because I have developed and cultivated these 4 intense states of recollection that I directly know the 1,000-fold world. In other words, he can see the 1,000-fold world so clearly, like in the palm of his hand. So you see from this sutta that psychic powers comes from the practice of satipatthana. But nowadays, some monks don't understand, and they say the practice of satipatthana has nothing to do with jhana. They say the practice of satipatthana is a pure vipassana practice. It is totally different from what the sutta says. It is because of practicing satipatthana that he attains the jhanas. And because he has attained the jhanas, he has great psychic power. There's no possibility of having psychic powers without jhanas. Impossible. So, in other words, the practice of Satipatthana is synonymous with the practice of the jhanas, and this we saw earlier in the Satipatthana Samyutta. The next sutta is 52.8. On one occasion, the Venerable Anuruddha was living at Savatthi in a salala tree hut. There, the Venerable Anuruddha addressed the monks thus: "Friends, the river Ganges slants, slopes and inclines towards the east. Now suppose a great crowd of people would come along, bringing a shovel and basket, thinking, we will make this river Ganges slant, slope and incline towards the west. What do you think, friends? Would that great crowd of people be able to make the river Ganges slant, slope and incline towards the west?" And they said, "No, friend." "For what reason?" "Because the river Ganges slants, slopes and inclines towards the east, and it is not easy to make it slant, slope and incline towards the west. That great crowd of people would only reap fatigue and vexation." Then Venerable Anuruddha said, "So too, friends, when a monk is developing and cultivating the 4 intense states of recollection, kings or royal ministers, friends or colleagues, relatives or kinsmen might invite him to accept wealth, saying, 'Come, good man, why let these saffron robes weigh you down? Why roam about with a shaven head and begging bowl? Come, having returned to the lower life, enjoy wealth and do meritorious deeds.' Indeed, friends, when that monk is developing and cultivating the 4 intense states of recollection, it is impossible that he will give up the training and return to the lower life. For what reason? Because for a long time his mind has slanted, sloped and inclined towards seclusion. Thus it is impossible that he will give up the training and return to the lower life. And how, friends, does a monk develop and cultivate the 4 intense states of recollection? Here, friends, a monk dwells contemplating the body in the body, feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. It is in this way, friends, that a monk develops and cultivates the 4 intense states of recollection. So this sutta says that a monk practices the 4 satipatthanas and will never disrobe. Why? Because his mind has for a long time inclined towards seclusion. This is very important. For a monk to find happiness in robes, the only happiness he can find is in his mind. Because we know this world, the external world, is a world of suffering, it's a world of impermanence, it's a world of change. And because of that, if you stay in the world, you're going to suffer. You may enjoy for a while, but eventually you will suffer. So we leave the world and practice seclusion. Seclusion means aloofness. Aloofness from society, aloofness from people. When I became a Theravada monk, then I wanted to live a lifestyle a bit similar to the Buddha's time. So I went to look for a cave to stay in Ipoh. Then I went to Penang also. I stayed in a cave and sometimes on a hilltop. So initially, it was not easy. Initially, because I came back from Thailand, I had gastric problem. So it was giving me a bit of problem. But later I just practiced patience and slowly it wasn't a problem anymore. I got used to it. So as the years went by, I got used to staying alone, and I like staying alone better than staying with people. So initially, it takes some getting used to, but once you get used to it, then your mind, as Sutta says, your mind inclines towards seclusion. So if you want to progress in the spiritual path, you have to go into seclusion. Not necessarily body seclusion. What is more important is mental seclusion, mental aloofness, going into the mind, dwelling in the mind more often. That's why, like the Buddha's disciples, although they stayed together in a monastery, like after they have taken their meal, They will each go different ways. You will find a quiet place under a tree, and they practice a meditation the whole day. Then at night they come together and discuss the Dhamma. So most of the day, and probably at night or so, they are alone by themselves. 52.10. On one occasion, the Venerable Anuruddha was dwelling at Savatthi in the blind man's grove, sick, afflicted, gravely ill. Then a number of monks approached the Venerable Anuruddha and said to him, "In what dwelling does the Venerable Anuruddha usually dwell, so that the arisen bodily painful feelings do not persist, obsessing his mind?" And he said, "It is, friends, because I dwell with a mind well established in the 4 intense states of recollection, that the arisen bodily feelings do not persist obsessing my mind. What for? Here, friends, I dwell contemplating the body in the body, feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. Friends, it is because I dwell with a mind well established in these 4 intense states of recollection that the arisen bodily painful feelings do not persist obsessing my mind." So you see, because he constantly dwells in the 4 satipatthanas, that he does not, this pain, the bodily pain, does not overwhelm him. But then you must, it's only logical to equate his dwelling in satipatthana with the jhanas, because when he dwells in the jhanas, then as we read earlier, the painful feelings, even in the first jhana, the first jhana, the painful bodily feelings are eliminated. And in the second jhana, the painful mental feelings are eliminated. And the third jhana, the pleasant bodily feelings are also eliminated. In the 4th jhana, even the pleasant mental feelings are eliminated. So that's why pain cannot obsess him, even from the first jhana. First jhana, body pains already cannot disturb you. So here again we see that the 4 satipatthanas are equivalent to the jhanas. 52.11. On one occasion, the Venerable Anuruddha was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Napapindika's park. Then a number of monks approached the Venerable Anuruddha and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, they sat down to one side and said to the Venerable Anuruddha, "By having developed and cultivated what things has the Venerable Anuruddha attained to great supernormal power or to great spiritual powers?" And he said, "It is, friends, because I have developed and cultivated the 4 intense states of recollection that I have attained to great supernormal powers." What for? Here, friends, I dwell contemplating the body in the body, feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. It is, friends, because I have developed and cultivated these 4 intense states of recollection that I have attained to great supernormal powers. Further, friends, it is because I have developed and cultivated these 4 intense states of recollection that I recollect or remember 1,000 world cycles. It's the end of the sutta. Even to remember one world cycle is not easy. I can remember 1,000 world cycles at such a long time. Because one world cycle is an extremely long time. The Buddha said, hard to imagine how long is one world cycle. And he can remember 1,000 world cycles. And that's all due to Satipatthana. 52.12. And he said, further, friends, it is because I have developed and cultivated these 4 intense states of recollection that I wield the various kinds of spiritual powers. Having been one, I become many. Having been many, I become one. He can fly like a bird. He can go through the wall. He can dive into the earth like diving into the water. And he can walk on the water surface. And even with the human body, he can fly as far as the Brahma heavens. And then the next sutta, 52.13. Further, friends, it is because I have developed and cultivated these 4 intense states of recollection, Satipatthana, that with the divine ear element which is purified and surpasses the human, I hear both kinds of sound, the divine and the human, those that are far as well as near. So here you see, if you want to develop the heavenly ear, you got to practice Satipatthana. And then 52.14. Further friends, it is because I have developed and cultivated these 4 Satipatthanas that I understand the minds of other beings and persons, having encompassed them with my own mind. I understand a mind with lust as a mind with lust, an unliberated mind as an unliberated mind, etc., etc. So you see from these suttas that all the various psychic powers are due to the practice of Satipatthana, which also means the practice of the jhanas. So the Satipatthana is synonymous with jhana. 52.20. Further friends, it is because I have developed and cultivated these 4 Satipatthanas that I understand as it really is the degrees of maturity in the spiritual faculties of other beings and persons. In other words, he can look into a person and understand whether how mature this person is. This is important for a Sammasambuddha or an Arahant who wants to teach the Dhamma to other beings. He has to gauge whether that being can understand the Dhamma or not. That's the end of the Anuruddha Samyutta.